Breaking tonight, the election just 82 days away, and the Republican nominee is shaking up his campaign at the very top. Donald Trump declaring he will do whatever it takes to win the White House. Welcome, everyone, to the Kelly File. I am Trish Regan, in for Megyn Kelly tonight. 3 campaign managers in 3 months. Hey, maybe third time's the charm. Donald Trump elevating his top poll star, Kellyanne Conway, who was seen here just last night on the Kelly File, to the role of campaign manager, and he added Breitbart.com executive chairman Steve Bannon, who assumes the created role of Trump campaign CEO. Paul Manafort will keep his role as campaign chairman. Why did he do this now? And how worried should Hillary Clinton be? We have a powerful lineup for you tonight. Dana Perino knows all about presidential messaging. She joins us on why the campaign rolled out such change just as positive reviews and very strong commentary were rolling in for Trump's speech last night. Ben Shapiro, formerly of Breitbart, knows Trump's new campaign CEO pretty well. He doesn't like him all so much. But Charles Hurt is a Trump supporter, and he says Bannon may just do the trick. They join us in just a couple moments to debate today's moves. But first, let's go to campaign Carl Cameron, chief political correspondent, with the very latest from inside the Trump campaign. Carl.
Hi, Trish. For years, when presidential campaigns hit rough patches, they've said it's time for a reset. And they'll shuffle the deck chairs, move some people around, hire new people. In this particular case, the Trump campaign refers to it as an expansion, not a shakeup. But the fact of the matter is, the man who'd been running the campaign has now been supplanted by Steve Bannon, a firebrand conservative, the type of Republican who feasts on anti-establishment rhetoric and attacking the institutions of the American body politic. Bannon brings to the Trump team the type of rhetoric, the type of approach that Donald Trump himself likes to demonstrate on the campaign trail. Bannon is now the top guy, and Kelly Conway, she's been elevated to campaign manager. Now, what she brings to the table is not only a very astute polling capacity, but she's quite expert in finding out what the themes of various different constituencies are. And one of the things that she thinks that she can help Donald Trump with is appealing to women more. So between the two of them, Bannon and Conway, Paul Manafort, the campaign chairman, has been at the very least layered. He remains in the job, but even though he was trying, along with a lot of other folks in the Trump campaign, to try to make the candidate adhere to a more message-oriented discipline instead of the off-the-cuff bombastic fireworks that he's now famous for, it clearly hasn't worked to date, and now with these 2 new additions, it would seem as though Trump has some allies in campaigning his way. Having said that, there's no lack of understanding of the challenge in the Trump campaign. They read the polls. They get it. They know that in most of the key battleground states, 11 or so, and there are polls just this week that illustrate this, in a number of cases, Hillary Clinton has jumped out to a lead that it has at times been in double digits. This is obviously very bad news under 12 weeks for Donald Trump, so now comes the change. He's also been campaigning in states, frankly, that are red states where normally at this point in the campaign a Republican nominee wouldn't be going, hoping that they're in the bank, and yet we see in many places where Hillary Clinton has canceled her advertising in swing states where she thinks she's comfortable and has now begun venturing into places like Utah and Nevada and Arizona, thinking that those traditionally red states can be moved into the blue category. So the Trump campaign starts anew, expanded as they are with 2 more people who happen to be now senior to their former campaign chairman. And as far as the Trump campaign is concerned, their target is always Hillary Clinton, and it's not about the internal mechanisms and mechanics of how this works, Trish.
All right, thank you so much, Carl. Well, the news of the shakeup, or shall we say expansion, at the top of his campaign came just hours after Mr. Trump delivered what was billed as a groundbreaking speech in which he made a direct appeal to African-American voters. Watch him here.
Law and order must be restored. It must be restored for the sake of all, but most especially for the sake of those living in the affected communities. The main victims of these riots are law-abiding African-American citizens living in these neighborhoods. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African-American community. Democratic crime policies, education policies, and economic policies have produced only more crime, more broken homes, and more poverty. I want to offer Americans a new and much better future.
Dana Perino is co-host of The Five and served as White House press secretary under President George W. Bush. She joins us now. Dana, good to see you.
Thank you.
You know, the speech was well received by a lot of different people. And he's had, you could say, a pretty good run since Monday. So all of this happening today, it seems to be in some ways taking away the opportunity he had to kind of ride those good headlines. Why do it right now?
I don't know. Because I agree that the last night's speech, by some accounts, I think it was Rudy Giuliani called it the best speech by a Republican ever, which I think Abe Lincoln might take issue with. But it was, yes, so they were trying to give him really good reviews for this. The news about the campaign change had held in secret since last Sunday. So to me, I'm like, why wouldn't you then just hold it for Friday night? Because the media will always cover a process story over a substantive story,
you know,
every time.
You're absolutely right. And it's one of my biggest criticisms of the media, this tendency. And here we are talking about it. But nonetheless, we're going to get to all the policy. We are going to get to the policy. But this is the latest headline. And so instead of talking about the ways to improve the socioeconomic communities throughout Black America right now, as he was just talking about there last night, here we are talking about the changes in his campaign. And it seems to detract from the important stuff he needs to get to. But nonetheless, maybe he just had to get it done right now.
Well, maybe the news was going to break and they wanted to break it themselves, or maybe because of the news, additional news about Paul Manafort's possible connections in Russia and whether or not he didn't fully disclose payments back to the United States, if there was some impropriety. I mean, that could be a little bit at the heart of this, that Donald Trump wanted to get in front of that and say, I understand that there's a problem there and I'm going to fix it by bringing in Bannon. And then with Kellyanne Conway, an interesting elevation to campaign manager. It's a new role for her. What I think is good for Trump is that she used to work for Ted Cruz. So when she did opposition research, she knows exactly what Trump's weaknesses are, and so she could probably help strengthen them. I think that's a good thing. And I think part of that speech last night was not just to the African American community, because he's got a 9% approval rating with African Americans. He is not going to fix that dramatically in the next 82 days. But women listening to him last night, if they were on the fence about him, maybe they would believe that the law and order message that he's giving and that change needs to happen in those communities would be helpful. And that might be where Kellyanne Conway can be really effective.
And one would have to think that Kellyanne was already weighing in
definitely.
before that speech on Monday night and of course, the one last night. Yep. Anyway, it's fascinating to watch, and we want to get back to some of this policy stuff. But Dana Perino, thank you so much. You know, the critics are out there. They're everywhere. They're on the left. They're on the right. And they're all taking issue tonight with Trump campaign's Breitbart connection. As we mentioned, Trump named Steve Bannon, the executive chairman of Breitbart News, as his new campaign CEO. Mr. Bannon is best known for his controversial right-leaning website and has been described as the most dangerous man in politics. I don't know about that, but that's what they say. Ben Shapiro is a former Breitbart editor-at-large and now the editor-in-chief of thedailywire.com. And Charles Hurt is a political columnist at The Washington Times. Welcome to you both. You know, the most dangerous man in politics. Wow. I mean, given that politics is as dangerous as it is these days, maybe that's not so bad to have on your side, especially when you're going up against the likes of the Clintons. But Ben, you don't think Bannon's going to help him. I know that you know Mr. Bannon quite well. Why do you say that?
Well, I'm not saying that Bannon won't help him. I think that Bannon could help him. He could help keep him on track a little bit. But I think that Steve Bannon has a record of telling Donald Trump to double down. Breitbart News has created this alternative reality where Donald Trump is always winning and his rally size matters more than his poll numbers. And Bannon has a history of speaking with various kind of high-level Republican politicians and Svengaling them a little bit, from Michelle Bachmann to Sarah Palin, and watching as their careers spiral the drain. I think Steve is a very smart guy. I think Steve is a very vicious guy. And I think that Steve has his own interests here. And his own interests don't necessarily matter very much when it comes to Trump winning.
I would think, I mean, now that he's joined the campaign and has taken on the role effectively of CEO of the whole Trump campaign, his interests should be aligned with Donald Trump's, in that he needs to win this thing as much as Trump needs to win this thing. I don't know why you take that on if you don't want to win. You want to go down as a loser? Why take that on? You could have stayed happily at Breitbart and just, you know, enjoyed the paycheck.
So Steve is a very smart guy, and that means that he doesn't put himself in win-lose scenarios. He puts himself in win-win scenarios. Right now, if Trump wins, obviously Steve is a power player at the White House, and I have to prepare for my IRS audit. If Trump loses, then presumably Steve moves on with Trump as an ally, and they prepare their stabs in the back myth, and they work together beyond that, because Breitbart and Trump have been working hand in glove together for months now. I mean, when I left in March, I said this was Trump Pravda, and that Bannon had basically turned Breitbart into that. Again, that doesn't mean that Trump is going to be hurt by bringing Bannon on, but there is a shark jump moment to all of this, and it's not just a shark jump. It sort of feels like Fonzie put on an Evel Knievel rocket pack and is jumping 1,000 left sharks from Katy Perry.
I don't know about that. I think, it's not over till the fat lady sings, as they say, and it's still early. We're not even at Labor Day.
I agree.
And Charles, let me ask you, what is it that Mr. Bannon can bring to the table? Because I think that while, running the website is one thing, actually running a campaign is something rather different. And let's face it, the Donald Trump that we have seen in the last couple of days has been a more modified version of himself.
Sure. Well, to be sure, I don't think that picking Steve Bannon to run his campaign is picking a political hack. Steve Bannon does not have experience running a presidential campaign, to be sure. But what I think that that decision does signal is that Donald Trump is doubling down on the message that Donald Trump has given from the beginning, and it's a message that's been very good for him, combating illegal immigration, domestic economy, again, domestic economy, not globalism, but the domestic economy, and fighting terrorism. And those things, there are very few people, especially on the right, who saw those three messages, those three issues as being as vital as they've proven it to be. One of them is, of course, Donald Trump, but another one has been Breitbart and Steve Bannon. And then the fourth overarching thing that I think is so vitally important and has done so much good for Donald Trump in this campaign has been his willingness to go up and shatter the political correctness that has strangulated politics in this country. And, definitely the Democratic Party, and I know that Ben agrees with me on that, and I think he probably agrees with me on this, too. Yeah. It's also strangulated the Republican Party.
Yeah, no, both sides, for sure.
You can't take away from Steve Bannon that he has been just as unafraid and unflinching to go after that kind of political correctness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a good thing.
Well, for sure. It is definitely refreshing to see that in politics these days, and I think that is so much of what people have responded to. Thank you so much. It's good to see both you guys tonight. First today for Donald Trump as he receives his first classified intelligence briefing from Washington officials. CIA-trained intel op Tony Shaffer, who spoke to one of the men in that briefing, is going to tell us what type of intelligence Mr. Trump received. And Governor Mike Huckabee is here to respond to the critics who say Trump shouldn't receive that intel. Plus, Congress finally getting its hands on the investigative documents from Hillary Clinton's email probe, only to find huge portions completely redacted due to sensitivity. Wait a second, I didn't think she sent or received any classified information, right? Congressman Jason Chaffetz is here exclusively on what Americans need to know now. We'll see you back here right after this.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material.
Donald Trump today receiving his first classified intelligence briefing from Washington officials. Trump brought along his advisor, former DIA Chief General Michael Flynn, to make sure everything was up to snuff. As he had previously suggested, he doesn't trust the intel coming out of Washington. But Flynn told Fox just a short time ago this was not only the real deal in terms of the intelligence, it suggested to him that the current White House isn't taking the threats we face as a nation seriously at all.
The policy decisions that a president makes sometimes can be in dramatic contrast to the intelligence that they receive. And then those policy decisions that this particular administration has made under both Hillary Clinton and President Obama, in many cases are in stark contrast to the intelligence that we were presented today.
Colonel Tony Shaffer is a CIA-trained intel op, now with the London Center for Policy Research. Moments ago, he actually spoke with General Flynn. Good to have you here, sir. I know that some of that conversation was likely off record, but the on record part, what sense did you get in terms of the actual challenges, the significant challenges that we're facing right now as a nation?
I think Mike accurately represented the reality we face. The White House has made decisions on policy not based on intelligence fact, not based on the ground truth. So that's, I think, evident. One of the things Mike did say is that the intelligence that he was briefed on today does not reflect accurately the propaganda being put out by the White House regarding some of the successes. And this has been one of the reasons Donald Trump has said, I don't trust the intelligence community. There's reasons for that. Congress just recently did an investigation of the Central Command cooking of the books, where Central Command was putting forth this really rosy view of the Central Command's success in Iraq against ISIS, which was completely false. That cover-up, that issue actually went all the way from Clapper, the DNI, to a guy named Scott Berrier, who was the J2 at the time, all the way up, as far as we can tell, to General Austin. That's one of the reasons that my sources tell me that General Austin was asked to move along before he was supposed to. So there's reasons why there's skepticism, and that's another reason Mike was there today, is to make sure that the information being presented is both accurate as well as in depth, necessary for someone like a Donald Trump who may become president to make decisions.
All right, so the intel community's job is basically just, here are the facts, ma'am, right? We're going to present them, and then the president's job and the lawmaker's job is to interpret those facts to come up with the best policies to keep us all safe.
That's correct.
And so General Flynn came away from that meeting saying, our president has not come up with the policies we need to keep us safe.
Absolutely, and I think General Flynn was actually saying that partly when he was director of DIS. Remember, General Flynn was the first officer to admit in testimony, open testimony, about the existence of ISIS going back almost 3 years. So Mike has been trying as best as I can tell to live up to his oath of office, to do what's necessary to tell the truth.
Right. Let me ask you quickly, because there are critics out there that say, well, you know, General Flynn has some ties to Russia. We keep hearing about Russia all the time these days. And there was concern that he was there in the intelligence briefing. How do you respond to those?
Well, look, I've known Mike a long time. I talked to Mike before he went to Russia. I talked to Mike after he came back from Russia. That whole trip was a research trip trying to figure out how to deal with the Russians strategically. They are in some instances an ally, in some instances a challenger. I don't want to go as far as say they're
an ally in terms of fighting ISIS, right?
Right now on ISIS, they're doing essentially, they're going after the same targets we are. Sometimes they're going after targets that we've trained, some of our rebels. With that said, for the most part, they are anti-Islamic radicalism as much as we are. There's other things that they're not as much as us.
No, it's an interesting time. Colonel Schaefer, thank you so much.
Thank
when
you
you think about it, I mean, we have allied with Russia before, back in
World
War II.
Yes.
Yeah, to very good effect. Joining me right now with more on the politics of all of this, former presidential candidate and Fox News contributor, Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, good to see you. All right, national security.
Thank you, Trish.
To me, shouldn't be all that political. This is pretty cut and dry. We got to keep everyone safe. But such is the reality of the world in which we live, and this is an election season. So how important is it for Donald Trump right now to stay laser focused on this issue of security?
Well, one of the things I think a lot of people don't understand, personnel is policy, and good policy is good politics. But with the Obama administration, they've reversed it. Everything is politics. They put policy last, and they put personnel really right next to politics. So you have really unprepared people who have been running the national security issue, like Ben Rhodes, who admitted they didn't have a clue what they were doing. And we
they were
know
duping
that they
journalists
engaged
along
in
the
a lot
way.
of home cooking. Well, but what they did was to make up narratives that they thought would help them politically rather than to tell the truth and trust the people. They just didn't, they don't trust the people. And that's a dangerous place for an open, free society like America to be.
Isn't that, Governor, in fact, why there is such an indictment against the last 8 years, that effectively the last 8 years have been nothing but politics, and thus we haven't gotten anything done? Whether it's on the national security front, whether it's on the economic front, whether it's just pure old gridlock in Washington, nothing happens because, for whatever reason, this president hasn't been able to put politics into the rearview mirror.
And let me be very clear to say that there's always been politics, doesn't matter Democrat or Republican, and if you use politics that's backed up by the truth, that's one thing. But look, this administration for 8 years has built politics on a radical ideology that is full of absolute lies. If you like your doctor, you can keep him. If you like your health insurance, you can keep him. Another big carrier just dropped out today. Everybody could see this coming. But we were lied to. We've been lied to about everything from Benghazi to Syria to the Russian reset to the overthrow of power in Egypt. I mean, it's easier to ask, what have we not been lied to? Hillary's emails, how many servers she had, what she did with those emails, whether it was used just to check on Chelsea's wedding. I mean, this has been 8 years of lying, and that's why people in this country are angry. They're not just unhappy. They're just in a seething rage, and it's why Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, and it's also why I still believe, in spite of all the press accounts, that he's going to win in November. Because when people ask themselves, do I want Donald Trump, a person who is not married to this political culture and ideology, or Hillary Clinton, who helped create the mess, who do you want? That's the choice.
Yeah, it's change or status quo. Thank you so much, Governor. Good to have you here.
Thanks.
All right, the Democrats' vice presidential nominee calling out Donald Trump's proposal to vet immigrants entering the United States. We're going to speak to a constitutional attorney and to a Muslim American who supports the plan and says, yes, we need extreme vetting. Plus, Mark Thiessen and Austin Goolsbee react to new calls from the liberal media, that the Clinton Foundation stop accepting donations. Also, Hillary Clinton's email probe comes under review by House Republicans, but Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz says he doesn't have adequate security clearance to view some of it. He joins us exclusively on that next.
I never sent or received any classified material.
Developing tonight, at the request of House Republicans, the FBI has handed over materials related to its investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. Now, there are new concerns about the sensitive nature of information handled on the former Secretary of State's unsecure server, as we learn that some of the newly obtained documents are so heavily redacted, even the chairman of the House Oversight Committee doesn't have proper clearance to read them. That chairman, Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz, joins me right now in a Kelly File exclusive. Representative Chaffetz, welcome. Good to see you. This material, I understand, was apparently all, according to her, originally theoretically so fine that she could actually email it around. So why now is it suddenly so super secret?
Well, I think it's always been highly classified. The Clinton campaign would seem to want to let the public know that it's only just a few and it's not that bad. But the sensitivity of the material is such that even I, as the chairman of the Oversight Committee, the chief investigative body, I don't have the proper security clearance as a member of Congress to look at this. And so the materials they provided to the Secure Communications Facilities, the so-called SCIF, there at the House of Representatives, under lock and key and guard. Even when I get in there to see it, it's going to be redacted to the point that I won't be able to read the complete file.
So, Representative, what does that tell you?
Well, it goes to the nature of how this very sensitive material, the material that puts people's lives in danger, was out there in the open. And you can't do that. We have more than 1 million people in this country that have security clearances, and I think it's clear to almost everybody, I thought, that you can't share that information. You can't allow people to have access to that information. You have to keep that in a secure server, in a secure setting. But that is not what happened top to bottom, start to finish, with this arrangement that Hillary Clinton made with herself.
Was she simply careless, or you think there was something else altogether going on?
Well, it went on for years. I mean, she was fairly sophisticated, a former United States Senator, former First Lady, surrounded by some of the top minds that she got to pick. And yet they created this scheme in such a way that they could bypass this. She set up this server on the very day she started her Senate confirmation. And again, information that's so sensitive and secret that in the hands of nefarious nation states, any sort of hackers, literally puts people's lives in danger.
So, Representative, what do you do now?
Well, I still want to get at the truth. We got to understand and plug this hole, because one thing I want the public to understand is it's not one email system. If you're dealing with classified information, that's on a separate system. You can't just forward that to an address that is not properly cleared. So somebody had to take that information and either regurgitate it, perhaps copy it, put it on a thumb drive. Maybe they downloaded a PDF. Maybe they just took the essence of that conversation and then put it on a non-secure setting. And so we got to make sure
we
that
don't know.
stops.
I mean, this stuff could be out there. And look, if you're someone who was working potentially for the CIA somewhere in the world, you'd probably be pretty nervous right now knowing that this stuff does exist somewhere or could have been hacked into. Representative Chaffetz, thank you so much. Good to see you tonight.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, allegations of perjury aren't the only thing plaguing Hillary Clinton tonight. The connection between Clinton's personal foundation and her time at the State Department was the subject of sharp criticism in a Boston Globe editorial. The publication finding this relationship so questionable, it suggests simply Clinton Foundation should stop accepting funds. Yeah, you think? Joining me right now, Mark Thiessen, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor, and Austan Goolsbee, former chief economist for President Obama. Good to see both of you. Austan, I'm starting with you tonight. So she's a smart woman, yes?
She is.
And she's been around politics a whole long time, and I think she probably at some point figured she'd probably go on to bigger and better things, even during her time there as Secretary of State. Yes?
Look, I don't know. It sounds like you're leading some questions.
Okay.
Why don't you just ask me what you want to ask?
I don't understand why, given that she is as smart as she is and as ambitious as she is, why on earth she would subject herself to the scrutiny she's now going through with this pay-to-play scandal just for a few lousy bucks for the foundation. So there's one of two things going on, Austan. She's either really stupid, really dumb, doesn't recognize that this would be a challenge for her political career, or she knows that and chose to do it anyway, which would suggest she's very corrupt. Which is it?
And have I stopped beating my wife? You forgot that the second part. You added the pay-to-play scandal. That is an accusation from a right-wing organization. That's not at all what happened.
All right,
the reason that she raised money, the reason that she raised money for the Clinton Foundation is that the Clinton Foundation, which has received a grade of A by the alliance that evaluates philanthropy organizations, used their money to reduce malaria drug prices by 90% throughout the developed world. They used money to reduce HIV infection rates around the world. They've done a lot of massively good charity. This is not a pay-to-play scandal.
They
That's
have
absurd.
done some very good things. I should point out that the majority of the revenue goes to overhead as opposed to actual charity, which is not in line with what most charities do. However, the other thing I would point out, let me ask you about the whole UBS scandal. I keep bringing it up because it's something that I just can't let go of because I'm so amazed by it. I mean, UBS, you know UBS, you're a financial guy. It wanted to get 55,000 of its clients off the hook from tax evasion by the IRS. So what does it do? It goes to Hillary Clinton, who is then the newly named Secretary of State. And she works out a deal, and these clients, the majority of them anyway, all except for 4,500 or so, they get off the hook. The IRS drops their investigation into them. And then what do you know? Austan,
how does the Secretary of State have anything to do with the Department of Justice investigation?
She assisted in this investigation, and then her husband, of course, got $1.5 million as well for speaking fees, and the foundation got a whole lot of money as well. Mark Thiessen, it just seems to me that, again, these things are kind of obvious. I mean, you know, as I've said before, you'd say, hey, hon, you know, you better sit that one out. Don't take a speaking fee from UBS this year. You know, wait a couple years because I did this deal for them on the side. I mean, how do you reconcile basically taking money from the countries that you might also be helping along the way?
But, Trish, they were dead broke when they left the White House. Didn't you hear?
I forgot.
I mean, they had no money. They were dead broke. They needed money. And now, guess what? They're not dead broke anymore. They're multimillionaires. Bill Clinton has enriched himself enormously with these speeches that were very closely tied. If you watch Peter Schweizer's movie Clinton Cash, which, by the way, these stories have been reported by the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, Austin. It's not just the right-wing groups that are saying this. These are left-wing newspapers that are reporting this stuff as well. They've enriched themselves through the Clinton Foundation and deals that just happened to coincide when Bill Clinton gave a speech in Russia, and then all of a sudden they've got uranium concessions for a donor. So, you know, there is a reason why 68% of the American people think that she is dishonest, and 6 in 10 think she should be prosecuted. They don't buy these excuses. They don't buy it because the Clintons lie, 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 and lie.
If she becomes president, what happens to the foundation? The Boston Globe says the foundation needs to end or go on hiatus for a few years because it just doesn't feel right. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
100% from Mark. Austin?
I don't see how you can say that and not be doubly outraged at the philanthropic behavior of Donald Trump, or be asking the question, what is that would happen to Trump Industries?
And I'm talking about this right now because this is a story at hand in the Boston Globe. Even the Boston Globe is saying this is not right.
The
foundation needs to go away if she becomes president. Does it?
If she becomes president, they should look at what the foundation, whether there is or could be some Chinese wall, or should they stop donations?
Yeah, I would have thought there would have been a Chinese wall at home, but I guess not. Anyway, thank you so much, Mark and Austin. Good to see you tonight. Okay. Also developing tonight, new reaction to Donald Trump's latest proposal to institute, quote, extreme vetting of immigrants trying to enter the United States. Some critics saying it violates American law. Others are saying it violates American values. Jonathan Turley is one of the nation's foremost constitutional law attorneys and a professor at George Washington University Law School. Welcome. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
You know, lots of concerns right now about whether this threatens freedom of religion. Because if you're Muslim and believe in Sharia law, that would theoretically be a red flag under Trump's plan. But you say it's legal to look at these things. How?
Well, it is constitutional, and it's not even unprecedented. I think we have to separate the policy question, and there's legitimate questions on both sides, from the legal part of that. And the legal analysis, I think, is pretty clear. A president's authority at the borders is really at its apex. It's at its greatest, highest level. And so President Trump would be able, I think, to implement this type of change, preferably with Congress. Congress is given a great deal of authority, for example, in defining naturalization conditions, and the president enforces those conditions. But there's no question that when you're talking about border entries, a president is given a lot of discretion. And also, people need to remember, we currently vet people coming into the country. So what he's suggesting is that he's going to take a closer look, that he'll be more demanding. Now, certainly questions can be raised as to whether we should do that, but I don't think there's much question that he could do that.
And is it because, you know, he's doing this for national security reasons, and thus that adds a different component to it? Or are you just going back to the fact that the president has a lot of power when it comes to securing borders?
Well, he certainly suggests that he wants to add a series of questions. Right now, you have people, for example, who want to be citizens will have to pass a test expressing their knowledge, confirming their knowledge of U.S. rights and values. He clearly would like to see them also affirmatively state that they believe in those values, and the same with other people entering the country. That is probably within his authority. Congress could stop it, but it probably is there. He's also suggested that he may slow entries from countries where he doesn't feel there's sufficient ability to confirm the backgrounds of individuals. Once again, he probably has that authority. He enforces these rules. And the rules as they stand now gives the executive the obligation to make sure that people are not dangerous to the United States. There are very general terms in those rules.
Very interesting. Professor, so good to have you here tonight. Thank you so much.
Trish.
All right, here to react, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He's the founder and president of American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Arash Aramish, who is a national security analyst and attorney. Good to see both of you guys. Dr. Jasser, beginning with you. I know you're an advocate for reform in the Muslim religion, and you say we need extreme vetting. Why are you so convinced of that?
Well, this is the only way to fight this war. We're at war, Trish, and we can't be undergoing this sort of national suicide or fratricide where we allow anyone to come in. And right now, the current paradigm is filtering for violent extremists. What is that? And not only should we be asking questions, and our Muslim Reform Movement has a declaration that laid out these ideas. There's a form of Islam that's compatible with America, and there's forms of Islam that are theopolitical, theocratic, that are not compatible. And we should not open our doors to insurgents that would come in and want to destroy our society from within. And it's not only the interview process. We should vet, have they been members of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Taliban, Wahhabi movements. So political Islamist movements should not be allowed in. It's pretty simple.
You know, Mr. Aramish, I'd like you to weigh in on this because, we're talking about a religion that has gotten corrupted to the point where it turns into a political movement, as Dr. Jasser just explained. I know you've been very much against this kind of extreme vetting, but how do you make sure you don't get these people that are jihadists in the country if you don't vet them?
We denied 1,200 visas in 2004 alone just based on suspicions of terrorism, okay? So it's not as if everybody who applies for a visa, almost 10 million people a year who come to the U.S. come here without a single question being asked. Secondly, the burden of proof is always on the foreign national to make the case to seek entry into the United States. Where Zuhdi and I actually agree is that, yes, we have to protect our values, we have to protect our homeland, we have to make sure anyone who comes here is not a criminal, is not a radical Islamist terrorist. That is completely fine. What I'm arguing here is expediency, is a method, and it's proficiency. It's to make sure these methods are practical and these methods are actually in a way that can be carried out. Trump is bringing up these ideas now because he is
let me just jump in, because you say we need to make sure that these people are not terrorists that are coming here. And yet, I don't know, Dr. Jasser, as we're doing that, because otherwise we wouldn't have seen what happened in San Bernardino actually happen. I mean, this woman came here and no one had any clue. He was not an immigrant, by the way.
He was born here. He was not an immigrant.
No, I'm talking about his wife. I'm talking about his wife who came here from Pakistan.
But Arash, your paradigm of filtering against terrorist organizations, terrorism is a tactic. The ideology that threatens us is theocratic Islam. And when you have the father of the Orlando terrorists sitting behind Hillary Clinton, gone through many security clearances, you realize that we have a major problem when it comes to Secret Service filtered him. So you think right now? Wait a minute. You think that right now? You think that right now we're vetting against members of the Taliban?
Hang on. Arash, go for your point. We just have 30 seconds left. Finish your thought.
Okay, so here, again, I'm arguing practicality and I'm arguing feasibility. Mr. Trump is behind in the polls. He is trailing Hillary Clinton in almost every battleground state. This week is immigration and Muslims. Next week is Mexicans. He has to do something to rally the base.
Look, I think a lot of national security concerns right now, and he's tapping into that for sure. Thank you so much. Good to see you both. Lots more coming up. Breaking tonight, 3 U.S. swimmers were just removed from a flight back to the United States after new questions and video surfaced in a reported violent armed robbery of the Olympians. And star Ryan Lochte. Trace has the break.